Yeah, right, sir. Welcome back. Uh, so let's start the session, sir. So yesterday, what we have discussed, sir. So yesterday we have discussed about. Yesterday actually focused on why do we need containers, right? Why do we need containers? And what were the problems with the existing infrastructure? Existing infrastructure. And the third thing is we have seen how to overcome those problems with Docker, right? And we have seen, so brief introduction of microservices, how exactly it works, microservices, the differences between monolithical architecture and microservices architecture, and one brief introduction to Kubernetes, what exactly it does, right? So yesterday we have seen all these concepts. So today we'll see what is Docker, okay, and we'll see the Docker lifecycle. Docker lifecycle, or you can say the Docker, the working style of Docker. You can say the working style. Docker. Okay, that means the phases which are included in while working with the Docker. Okay, today let's discuss about these two things. Okay, right, sir. So, what is Docker? So, what is Docker? So, Docker, let's take the definition, sir. Docker is an open source containerization Docker is an open source containerization technology which is used to build, ship, and run the applications along with the environment. Along with the environment. So what is Docker, sir? Docker is an open source containerization technology which is used to build, ship, and run the applications along with the environment. Okay. So in order to run an application, whatever the things that are required, the required softwares, okay, the required libraries, and along with the OS. Okay. Actually, it is developed using, Docker is developed using Go language. Docker is developed using Go language. Docker is developed using Go language. You can create multiple containers or n number of containers. There is absolutely no limit, sir. Number of containers. Okay, there is absolutely no limit. If the container is up and running, then only it will use the resources. That's that point also will take, sir. If the container is up and running, then only it will use the resources. Okay. Once the container is stopped, all the allocated resources will be freed. Okay. If the container is up and running, then only it will use the resources. So once the container got stopped, all the allocated resources will be freed so that you can use the resources for other containers. Right, sir? And next, each and every container is an isolated environment from others. Each and every container is an isolated environment from others. Okay. Now let's focus on these points. Okay, each and every container is an isolated environment from others. So how my Linux box or how my server is providing this isolation environment from one container to another container? As we discussed, okay, so Docker is like a VM. Okay, it's not the replacement of VM, but in order to understand in the initial days, just try to understand like Docker is like VM, not like VM. Just understand, it's not completely like VM. Just for the understanding purpose, it is just like VM. Okay. So if you have a box, if you have a machine, okay, if you have a machine, let's say if you have a VM box, or if you have a cloud server, okay, if you have a virtual machine of a Linux, okay, if you have any virtual machine, in this case I'm taking Linux, okay. So once you install Docker on top of this Linux box, once you install Docker on top of this Linux box, you can go ahead and create Docker containers on top of this Linux box. Okay, here box means server. Okay, so once you install Docker on top of your Linux, one logical layer will be created on top of your OS. So this logical layer actually is called as Docker engine. Okay, so once you install Docker on top of your Linux box, it will create one logical layer on top of the OS, which is called as Docker engine. Okay, so what is the purpose of Docker engine? It will allow us to create a containers on top of this Linux box. Okay, as I said, initial days, just assume that Docker is like a VM. Okay, let's say I'm having some operating system Linux. Right? Let's say I'm having some Ubuntu operating system. Okay, I'm having some Ubuntu operating system. So on top of that, I have an application. Okay, for this application, I need some CentOS box. Okay, I have some application. In order to run that application, I need a CentOS box. Okay, so what I need to do? I'll create a container out of one CentOS image. I'll create one container out of one CentOS image. But in this case, the full CentOS will not be there. Okay, as we discussed yesterday. Okay, what exactly this OS of a container will be having? It is having only the required softwares. Okay, and it will use the basic Linux kernel from the host operating system. Okay, if you can observe, if you are well versed with the Linux, so the major difference between these two, CentOS and Ubuntu, is okay, the underlying kernel will be same for any of the Linux operating system. The underlying kernel will be same for any of the basic operating system. So if you have a CentOS box, what will be there? CentOS related softwares will be there. That means separate drivers for Wi-Fi, separate drivers for user inputs, something like that. Okay, some CentOS softwares will be there. Okay, so if you have Ubuntu, some Ubuntu related softwares, some drivers. Okay, only this much difference will be there. The underlying kernel will be same for any of the Linux box. Okay, so if you install complete set of OS, everything will be there. Let's say if I want to install a CentOS box, what it will do? It will come along with the kernel and along with the CentOS related softwares. Okay, in size it will be in GBs. So that's why the booting time of these servers are very high. But if you take container, if you want to create a container, what you need to have is, you don't need to worry about this kernel. Only you can create an operating system with this CentOS software, CentOS related softwares. That too, if you want to have a CentOS box on top of your Ubuntu box. Okay, if you want to create a CentOS container, how to create containers, how to take these images, currently don't need to worry. Okay, we will be discussing this one in the coming classes. No need to worry. Okay, just understand that instead of taking the entire OS, if you want to create a container, what I'm taking is, I'm taking only the CentOS softwares which is used to create a CentOS, a basic OS. Okay, so other things it will take. So in order to run the operating system, the kernel is called as the heart of the operating system, right? So the underlying kernel, it will use from the host operating system. Okay, because this host operating system is Linux, right? It is having kernel, right? So it will use that kernel from the host machine. Okay, let's say if this application wants a Python or some other things, let's say I'll install Python like this. First, I'll take the OS, and then on top of that, I'll install the required softwares, and then I will deploy my application on top of that one. Or else I can create my application on top of my container. Okay. So after that, if I want to create one more container, yes, I can go ahead and create one more container. Okay. Let's say this time, in order to run an application, okay, let's say I am having some Node.js kind of application. Okay, so for that, my requirement is, I need some Ubuntu container, okay, or else some SUSE container, some other operating system, okay, apart from Windows, because Linux kernel is different from Windows kernel, right? Okay, just assume that I want one more Linux box. Let's say I want basic some Ubuntu with a different version. Okay, let's say I'm having some Ubuntu 18.04 operating system over here, some 18.04 operating system here, some advanced version. So for my application, I want some Ubuntu 16.04, some older version. What I can do, I can go ahead and take this Ubuntu software, which is of a 16.04 version. Okay, which is of 16.04 version. So on top of that, what I'll do, I will Install the Node.js related softwares. On top of that, I'll develop my application. Okay. So what I mean to say is now this each and every container that you are going to create, that you are creating, is an isolated environment from others. Okay. So if you update a Python package, if you update a Python related package or Python related software in this container, it will not affect the environment of the other container. Okay. It's like two different servers. It acts like two different servers. So for the end users, these are like two different servers. Okay. If you update anything on this container, it will not going to affect the other container. Okay. If you stop this container or if you destroy this container, it will not affect the other container, because each and every container is an isolated environment from others. Okay. So how my Linux kernel is providing this isolation feature? Okay. How my the basic operating system I have, right? A Linux operating system, the kernel. How my basic kernel is providing this kind of isolation environments. Okay. In order to understand that, we need to go little depth into the operating system concepts. Okay. So in any Linux, okay, all the processes which are running inside a server will be having same set of metadata. Okay. First, let me write this one and let me try to explain this one. Okay. These metadata includes namespaces and C groups. Okay. So if someone gives you two process IDs and asks you that just to verify is these two processes are running on a same server on different servers. Okay, observe my point, sir. If somebody gives you two process IDs and asks you to check whether these two processes are running in the same server or two different servers, how to check? Okay, for each process ID, there will be some metadata. Okay, if you go to the metadata, okay, if the namespaces, the IDs of the namespaces are same, then you can say these two processes are running on a same server. Okay, if the namespaces of the two process IDs are different, then you can say that these two processes are running in two different servers. Okay. Now, what we will be going to do is I launch two containers. Okay. So there will be two processes, right? Two processes will be initiated on the kernel level. Okay. For each container, one process ID will be initiated. Okay. I'll check these two process IDs metadata. I'll check these two process IDs metadata. Okay. If the two process IDs metadata is same, then these two processes are running on a same box. Okay. If these two process IDs metadata is different from each other, then I can conclude that these two processes are running on different environments, on different servers. Okay, that is what actual isolation, right? Actually, these two process IDs metadata should be different. because these two processes are running in two different servers. Containers are nothing but servers. Okay. So got my point? I'll initiate two containers. Okay. So let me clearly mention this point as well. So if you create a container, on top of a Linux box or on top of any one host operating system, okay, for the developers or for the end users, it is like a VM. It is like nothing like it's nothing but like another server. But for an admin, it is nothing but a process. Okay, one container is nothing but a process. It will initiate a process on the kernel. That's it. Okay, it will initiate one process. That's it. For the developers or for the end users, each container is like a VM box. Each container is like a server. But from the admin point of view, if you create a container, what exactly will happen is it will simply create a process. It will simply create a process on top of your host operating system. That's it. Okay. So this container will run until this process exists. Okay. Once you exit this process, automatically the container will be stopped. The container will be killed. Okay. If you kill the process, the container will be killed. Okay, sir. So for the developers and for the end users, it is nothing but us. Each and every container is nothing but like a different server. Okay. But for admins, if you observe the architecture for the admin, what exactly is a container? Container is nothing but a process. That's it. Okay. If you start a container, it will create a process. Okay. Now, as I said, each container is an isolated environment, like isolated processes. Okay. Now let's verify whether these two containers, these two processes are running in the same server or on different servers. Okay. Whatever the application that we are writing here, right? Is these two processes are running on same server or different servers. Okay. If I said these two are running on different servers, I mean two different isolated environment, the process IDs, the metadata of the process IDs should be different, because these two are two different servers, right? Okay, I'll create two containers and I'll initiate two processes inside these containers, and I'll check the metadata of these two process IDs. If these two process IDs metadata is same, okay, then these two processes are running on a same box. If these two process IDs metadata is different from others, then I can say that these two processes are running on two different servers. Okay. Now let's go and verify, sir. Let's go and verify. So I already installed Docker on top of this my box. Okay. Just you don't need to worry how to install. We'll take that in a separate class in the coming classes, like by tomorrow. By tomorrow we'll see the installation and the Docker architecture. Okay. Now observe, sir. So how to list out all the processes inside a Linux box? How to? So let me switch as user root. Okay. So how to list out all the process running inside a Linux box, sir? Let's say ps-ef ps-aux, ps related commands are there, right? ps-a. Observe, sir. These many number of processes that are running inside my Linux box. Okay. So if you can observe, sir, okay, even if you boot the system, if you start a Linux box, what is the first process that will trigger in any Linux box? Okay. So first, if you start any Linux box or if you restart any Linux server, first one process will get triggered, sir. That process will trigger the other process, the other remaining process. Okay. So just for the understanding purpose, once you boot your machine, the first process it will trigger in any Linux box is init. Okay. All the root related commands will be there in sbin. Okay. Within the sbin, what is the first process ID? The first PID is init. Okay. In the newer versions of operating system, it is called a system D. Okay. It is what is the first process that will get initiated first. Okay. Now this process will trigger some other processes. Okay. All these are process IDs. All these are process IDs. So now, how would I get the metadata about this process? How would I get the metadata about these processes? Now observe, sir. Okay, let's take any of one process ID. So many processes are running here. Let's take some process ID. Let's say some process is running on. Okay, this is what the process ID. What is the process ID, sir? 5568, right? Now observe my screen, sir. Now observe my screen. 5568, right? Some double. So 5568, right? Some random process ID I have taken. 5568. So all the process related metadata information will be provided in a directory called /proc. Okay, will be there in /proc. Now observe, sir. So all these are the running process related information. All these directories are the process IDs. Okay. Now if I want to check one particular process related metadata information. Okay, go to any of the process. So what is the process name that we have seen, sir? 5568. This is the process ID, right? So observe, sir. Observe 5568 is there or not here? Observe the process ID 5568 is there here. So now go to that process ID 5568, enter, and ls and ls. Okay, so all these are the process related information, sir. Okay, all these are the process related information. So what we want here, we want something called as ns. We want something called as ns. Ns stands for namespace. Ns stands for namespace. So what are the different kinds of namespaces that are available for this processor? Observe, sir. These are the namespaces that are available for this process. Okay. Observe the process ID, sir. Okay. Here we have these many different kind of namespaces which are responsible for, let's say, PID is responsible namespace. You'll get your here we are seeing the IDs, right? Okay, so PID namespace is responsible to allocate process IDs. Okay, PID namespaces are responsible to allocate process IDs. If you are seeing the process IDs, means something should be running on kernel level, right? Okay, on the kernel level, these namespaces will work. Okay, all these namespaces will work from the kernel level. These are the namespaces related metadata. Excuse me, sir. Okay. Now PID namespace actually, let me write down here, sir. Different kinds of namespaces, right? So what are the namespaces that we are seeing over there? Something called as a PID, and then PID, UTS, user, PID, UTS, user namespace, and say network namespace, net namespace, MNT, IPC, MNT, IPC, MNT, IPC, and then something called as C group. Something called as C group, right? C group. So what exactly is these namespaces are related to? Okay, are responsible for. So PID namespace is responsible to allocate process IDs, on top of a Linux box. Okay, this UTS namespace is responsible to allocate host names to a Linux box. Here box means a server, sir. Whenever I say box or machine or server or an instance, okay, just assume that it's a server. Okay. Now user namespace is responsible, okay, to create user level environments like user IDs. Okay, if you create some random user ID will be generated, right? User IDs and group IDs. Okay, this user namespace is responsible to create user IDs on top of the Linux box. Okay, now it is responsible for network. Another one is network related namespace. Okay, what is this network related namespace? Responsible to provide the network related stuff to a Linux box. Okay, next mount namespace. Okay, this it is used to, or it is responsible to provide file systems or directory structure. It would be safe if I say directory structure. Okay, directory structure to a Linux box. Directory structure, any Linux box would have the directory structure like this. As you might know, if you don't know, just try to attend my DevOps classes as well. Okay, from tomorrow morning 9 a.m. from today morning 9 a.m. I'm going to start a new batch for DevOps. So within the DevOps batch, I'll be starting Linux. Okay, I'll start it from absolutely basic scratch itself. Okay, maybe tomorrow I'll introduce Linux to the DevOps class. So if you can observe, okay, if you create any Linux box, this kind of directory structure will be created for you. Okay. So in order to provide this kind of directory structure on kernel level, which namespace is responsible for this one? Mount namespace, MNT namespace is responsible to provide a directory structure to any Linux box. And IPC stands for inter-process communication. It is responsible for inter-process communications. Okay, so if you observe, one parent process is there and one child process is there. In order to maintain communication between these two processes, IPC will be useful. Okay, if you observe that I have shown you that first one process will be triggered with the PID number 1. What is the process? Init, right? So actually it is called the parent process. Now it initiated all the other process, right? So in order to maintain this communication, this IPC namespace will be used on the kernel level. Okay, and the third thing is, and the final thing, C groups. It's called C group namespace. Okay, C group namespace. Now it is responsible to provide limitations to the processes. Okay, limitations like CPU utilization and memory utilization, let's say. Okay, we can limit those things. Okay, so one process wants to use, let's say some 30 MB of RAM. You can limit that here. Okay, the CPU utilization you can limit out here. The CPU and RAM utilization you can limit by using a C groups. Okay. So all these namespaces will be used in order to isolate a process which is running from one server to another server. Okay. If you can observe, okay, if you can observe all the process that are running in my box now, in my Ubuntu server now, assume that it's my Ubuntu server, all these process should be having the same set of metadata, because the same set of all these namespaces numbers should be equivalent. Okay, as I said, if I give two processes, okay, whether I want to check with these two processes running on the same server or different servers, how to check? I'll check the metadata of those namespaces metadata of those two processes. If those two namespaces metadata are same, then I can say that these two processes are running on the same server. Okay, right? Now I'll take one more process ID. I'll take one more process ID 3921 and I'll observe that, okay, these two process IDs namespaces metadata are same or different. Okay, I'll take one more process ID now. If these two process IDs metadata is same, then I'll say that these two processes are running on a same server, right? Now observe, sir. Let me go to that namespace and verify what is. Let's take any random process ID and let's verify the namespaces IDs here, sir. Okay, 391, right? So I'll say I'll write ls here, ls hyphen ltr of /proc under /proc directory 3517 some random process ID I have taken. Under 3517 there will be namespace, right? Enter, sir. Now observe the namespaces metadata, sir. The namespaces IDs. UTS metadata, you see our UTS ID. If you can observe, what is that, sir? 4026531838. Here observe, sir. 4026531838. And 4026 the user namespace. 4026531837. Observe, sir. The user level, the user metadata. Okay. The PID namespace metadata you observe, sir. 4026531836. Both are same, right? The network related metadata 969 is same, right? The mount namespace metadata 4026531840. Observe, sir. 4026531840. Now IPC metadata, observe, sir. 4026531839. Observe 4026531839. And the C group metadata, sir. 4026531835. Here 4026531835. If you take any of the process which is running inside this Linux box, okay, we'll be having same set of metadata for all the processes. Okay. Now just observe my screen, sir. I'm going to start a new container. Okay. Now I'll check. Okay. I'll check the process ID, the metadata of that container. I'll check the metadata of that container of process ID and the some random process IDs metadata of my Ubuntu box. Okay. And I'll verify whether these two are two separate environments or not. Okay. Whether I have created a new server on top of Ubuntu or not. Okay. If this process is running on different server rather than this particular host operating system, then I should get two different namespaces metadata. Okay. After that, I'll create one more container and I'll check these two containers namespaces metadata. Okay. If these two servers namespaces metadata are different, then I can say that each and every environment is isolated from others. Okay. Each and every environment is isolated in the Docker environment. Okay. Why isolation is required? If I install or if I upgrade something over here, it should not affect my container servers. Okay. Some isolation should be required, right? Now observe, sir. Let me try to create a new container and verify the process ID of that container metadata with the Ubuntu metadata, like with my host operating system metadata. These two should be different. Okay, these two should be different. For now, just don't worry about these commands. I'm just creating one new container. Okay, don't worry, sir. Let's say I'm starting one container with some Nginx container. That means I'm starting one Nginx process. Okay, I'm starting one Nginx process. As I said, one process should be up and running. In order to create a container, one process should be there. Okay, so within that container, what process I have selected this Nginx process. Don't worry about this command. Just observe that I'm just starting a new container. That's it. Okay, I have started a new container. So don't worry about these commands. Okay, we are going to discuss about these commands in the coming sessions. Don't worry. For now, my motto is to check the namespaces metadata of my host operating system to my newly created container. Okay, whether this container acts like a VM or not, this container acts like a separate box or not. Okay, if the container acts like a separate box, as I said, if the container acts like a separate server, then the namespaces of these two should be different. That's what my intention is. Okay, I'm clearing this concept. Again, I'm clearly stating this point. Okay, now the namespaces of this container should be different from the namespaces of this Ubuntu operating system. Okay, because I am going to create one new container. One container means nothing but one new server. Okay, now observe, sir. I have created one container. Now let's take the process IDs of the container. Let's say docker container top is the command should be used. For now, just don't worry about the command. I want some process IDs which is running inside this container. Something like this. Okay. So two processes that are running inside that container. Okay. So one process is like Nginx master and master process, Nginx master process, and the second one is some worker process is there. Now take the PID, sir. Now take the PID. As I said, if you create a new server, as you create a new container means nothing but you are just initiating one new process. That's it. Okay. Just forget about that, sir. Now just observe the take the PID over here, sir. It's what is the PID? 9549, right? 9549. Sir, first let me copy the server's namespaces metadata over here. Namespaces. Just we'll try to go compare whether they both are same or not. Okay. So it will be clear if I paste it over here. Okay. So these are the metadata of host operating system. Okay. I'll leave it as host operating system, host OS, process, namespaces metadata. Okay. Now observe, sir. Now observe. Okay. So what is the process ID of my container? 9549, right? Just take the metadata of that one as well. ls-ltr. So all the process related data will be in proc directory. So what is the PID of that one? 9549, and so all the namespaces metadata will be there in NS directory. Okay, just copy and paste over here. I'm just copying. Okay, this is my container process. This is my container process metadata. Observe, sir. Observe, sir. So what is the UTS namespace over here, sir? 40261838. Now what is the UTS namespace of my container? Is it same or different? 4026532375. This is different, right? Because if you create a container for the end user, it's like a different, it acts like a new VM. Okay, it acts like a new server. It's another server. Okay. So observe, sir, observe the UTS namespace. The ID is different. Observe the next, what is the namespace that is here? User namespace, right? What is the user namespace? 4026531837. Okay, observe the user namespace, sir. 4026531837. Okay, because okay, just observe this point. Other than this, just verify other namespaces as well, sir. So PID namespace 4026531836. Here PID namespace 4026532377. Okay, the network namespace 4026531969. Okay, the network namespace 402652. So different, right? The mount namespace is 4026531840 in my host operating system, in my container network. Okay, the mount related namespace is like 4026532374. Okay, so the user namespace 4026531837. Here the user namespace is 4026531837 because actually I started my container as a root user, right? As a root user. Okay, I started my container as a root user and I ran all these commands as my root user, right? So I logged in as user root and I created the container as root user. Okay, that's why the user namespace is showing the same thing. Okay, now observe C group, sir. Observe C group, sir. 4026531835. Observe the C group here as well. 4026531835. The C group also same. The C group also same. The C group metadata is also same. Now let's try to launch one more container. Okay, and observe the metadata of that container, sir. Okay, now let's try to launch one more container and we'll see, okay, the metadata of this container, and we'll compare the metadata of this container from this container, whether these two are isolated environment from each other or these two are in the same environment. Okay, let's go and verify, sir. Let's go and verify. Let me go ahead and quickly create one more container. Okay, again I'm creating some other container. Okay, I'll take the process IDs. We say Docker container top and something called 9E57, right? Some say 9E5. Okay, so what is the process ID of this container? 9794, which is running inside my container. 9794 is the process ID. 97. Let's take this one as well, sir. ls-ltr. So slash proc under the proc. What is the name? 9794 is the process ID. 9794 is the process ID, and under the 9794 is something ns. Now let's try to copy this one. Let me copy this one and let's try to paste over here. Okay. So these two, sir, these two namespaces should be different, because if you create a container, this means creating a new server. It's equivalent to creating a new server. Okay, it's just mimicking like it is creating a new server. That's it. Okay, so these two process IDs namespaces should be different. Then only we can say that these two containers are isolated from each other. These two containers are isolated from each other. Now verify, sir. Now verify. Okay, so the network namespace 4026532379 here 4026325880, and some UTS namespace. Observe, sir, some 75 is there here, some 76. So the PID, the process ID, PID namespace 4026532377. Okay, here 40265325 some 78. Observe the mount namespace 4026532374 and 4026532375, and observe the IPC, sir. It is different, right? Now again observe C group, sir. Again observe C group. Again observe C group 4026531835. Here C group is same. That means even though if you create n number of containers for all containers, okay, and for all the processes which are running on my host operating system, for everything my C group namespace is same. Okay, my C group namespace is same. That's why the C group namespace actually is called as a global namespace. Okay, this C group namespace is called as global namespace because it is same across all the containers and across the entire host operating system, the C group namespace is same. That's why it is called as a global namespace. Okay. So now observe, sir. Okay. So these namespaces are responsible. These namespaces are, apart from C group, the other namespaces are responsible to isolate one container from another container. Okay. And these namespaces are responsible for the isolation of my container to my host operating system. So what I can say, by seeing this, what I can say, namespaces are used to provide isolation from, say, namespaces. I'll write here, so I'll write this point over here. Okay. Namespaces are used to provide isolation environment. Okay, actually this is what the concept behind the containers, sir. Okay, if you take any container, only these two are the concepts. Okay, namespaces and C groups will be behind of those containers concepts. Okay, you can simply just say that what is a container? It is nothing but a combination of namespaces and C groups. Okay, if someone asks you the technical definition, what is exactly is that container? Okay, you can simply say that, okay, from now onwards, if anybody asks you what exactly is a container, okay, in interviews, if anybody asks the container, what exactly is container, even though if they ask in interviews, you can simply say that it is a combination of namespaces and C groups. Okay, you can simply say the statements. Namespaces are used for the isolation and C groups are used to limit the resources. Okay, it will limit the resources, and these namespaces are used for the isolation purpose. Okay, sir. Now let's try to understand a small concept on C group as well now. Okay, just observe, sir. Okay. I'll just try to understand a small concept, sir. Okay, let's say I have two clients. Okay, I have a server. Let's say I have some Linux server. Okay. So on top of that, I have two clients, and I have I've allocated two different containers. Okay. So let's say one container is running some Wipro company application. Okay. Let's say assume that I'm running two applications. I'm hosting a server. Okay. So Wipro company related container I have hosted here, and here I have allocated, okay, this container to host application for some, let's say TCS. Okay, TCS. Okay, in order to host their servers, let's say this Wipro is paying something like some $100 per month. Assume that Wipro is providing some $100 per month. Okay, they are providing rent $100 per month in order to host their application on my server, and TCS is providing let's say some $50 per month. As I said, okay, containers will use the resources from the host operating system, right? From the host machine. Okay, if these two containers wants to use the resources like a CPU or RAM, okay, or any kind of hard disk kind of stuff, from where it will use? It will use from the host machine, right? So this company guys are providing $100 per month, and these companies are providing $50 per month. Okay, there is a difference between the payment, right? But here, these two persons can utilize the entire resources of my host machine. Okay. If there is the entire resources of this host machine, even though from the next month, my pro guys will say for the $50, they are using the entire resources of your host machine. From now onwards, I will also pay $50. He might say that, right? Because for the $50, he is using the entire resources. Okay. So in order to limit the CPU utilization and the RAM utilization, what we'll do is we'll put some limits by using the C groups. Here exactly the C groups comes into the picture. Okay. So how you limit the resources? How you limit the resources? By using C groups. By using C groups. Okay. While creating the container, I'll mention the limits by using a C groups. I'll say that, okay, if you are paying $100, right? You can use up to, let's say some 1 GB of RAM. Okay, you're paying some $50, right? Okay, you can use some 500 MB of RAM. Okay, I'll set some limits with the help of these C groups. Otherwise, if C groups are not there, they can use my entire resources. Okay, this is where exactly the C groups comes into the picture. So in the coming sessions, we'll be seeing the C groups as well. Okay, we'll be seeing some limits, setting up limits to my containers while creating the containers, everything, because the entire Docker concept actually is basically on the back end depends on these two things, namespaces and C groups. Okay. So they will provide isolation environment from one container to the other container and from host machine to the containers. Okay. So that's all for today, sir. That's all for today. And hopefully tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll discuss the Docker, let's say working style. Okay. Like how exactly we need to work with the Docker. So what are the different phases that will be there in Docker, and we will try to discuss Docker architecture, sir. Okay. That is the Docker container architecture we will going to discuss in depth. You need to understand that, because as a Docker admin or as a Kubernetes administrator, if something goes wrong, okay, you should understand, you should be having a good idea from the architecture level itself. Okay. So we are going to see something called as containerd, shim, Docker, Dockerd. Okay. We are going to talk about runc. So many things are there. We are going to discuss about those architectural point of view and the installation of Docker related, like how to install Docker on various, let's say on Ubuntu or CentOS or on Windows. Okay, what are the differences between these two things? We are going to discuss in the coming classes, sir. Okay, so that's all for today, sir. I am just stopping the recording over here. If you have any doubts, you can post your doubts in the chat box.